You won't believe what this boy did on a rainy road, and how it changed his life forever. The storm had rolled in fast that afternoon, swallowing the sky with thick, gray clouds that poured rain in heavy waves. The road was cracked and forgotten, winding through the edge of a quiet town that didn't notice much anymore. But Nico noticed. He noticed her. She was walking slowly, her back hunched, one shoe missing, the other slipping with each wet step. Her clothes were soaked through. She wasn't just old. She looked broken. Cars drove by. One slowed for a second, then sped up again. Another swerved wide, splashing water. No one stopped. Nico, a homeless Mexican boy, did. He stood at the edge of the road with bare feet and shivering arms. His shirt was torn. His jeans were rolled up and stained. He hadn't eaten since the night before. But when he saw her, something in him moved. He walked up slowly. Didn't say anything. Just reached out his hand. The woman stared at him. Her face twisted in confusion and fear. But he didn't flinch. His hand stayed out. His eyes stayed calm. After a moment, she reached for him. Nico helped her walk. Her legs buckled with every few steps, but he held her steady. He led her down the side street toward the back of the gas station, where a small, dusty garage sat hidden behind rows of overgrown weeds. He opened the door. Helped her inside. Sat her down on an old mattress he used to sleep on. Rain tapped against the thin metal walls. The wind howled outside. Inside, it was still. Nico lit a small candle and pulled a towel from the shelf. He wrapped it around her shoulders. The woman leaned back and closed her eyes. She was exhausted. But something in her shifted. Her shoulders softened. Her breathing slowed. Later that night, while she slept, the garage door slammed open. Tony. The gas station manager. He stepped inside with wet boots, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. His eyes narrowed when he saw Nico. What the hell is this? Nico jumped to his feet. She needed help. She was in the rain. She's old. Tony crossed the room in 2 big steps. This ain't a rescue shelter. You bring some stranger in here, someone who might be crazy. What are you thinking? Nico stood still. She was limping. No one else stopped. Tony snorted. Of course they didn't. That's not your problem. You want trouble. This is how you get it. Nico didn't answer. His fists were clenched. Not in anger. In fear. He'd heard this before. Not just from Tony. From others. Always the same tone. The same words. When he tried to ask for a job sweeping porches. Kid, go bother someone else. When he stood outside the store too long. You're making people uncomfortable. When he asked for help. You people just take. Tony pointed at the woman. If she's still here when the morning guy shows up, you're gone. Don't make me call someone. He left without another word. Nico looked at the woman on the mattress. She hadn't woken up. He sat beside her. He wrapped her in his jacket. His only one. It wasn't warm, but it was something. He didn't sleep. At dawn, the rain had stopped. The garage was quiet except for the sound of her breathing. Then, her eyes opened slowly. Josephine Callahan awoke slowly, her body aching, her skin cold despite the blanket around her shoulders. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The metal roof, the smell of rust and old oil, the candlelight flickering near the wall, it wasn't the ranch. It wasn't her house. Then she saw the boy. He was sitting on the floor across from her, legs crossed, arms folded over his knees. His eyes were heavy, but alert. He hadn't slept. She could tell. When she moved slightly, he stood up and brought her a chipped mug. It's just warm water, he said quietly. I don't have much. She took it with trembling hands and sipped. It soothed her dry throat. She didn't know what to say. Josephine remembered the road. The rain. Her ankle twisting. Her head hitting something hard. And before that, her son. His face, so familiar, twisted in anger. His voice rising as he called her stubborn, old, useless. Then the smell in her tea. The dizziness. The growing fear as he told her to sign papers she hadn't read. Told her to leave her house. She shook the memory away and looked at the boy again. You stayed with me all night. He nodded. Didn't want you to be alone. Josephine's heart pinched. She had raised a son who saw her as a burden. This boy, a stranger, had guarded her like she was treasure. He handed her the last of the bread. You can have it. I'm not hungry. His stomach growled as he said it. Josephine stared at him. What's your name? Nico, he said. You live here? He nodded again. Behind the gas station. It's not bad. Nobody bothers me. She saw the way his shoulders lifted when he said that. Like it was the only good thing he had, to not be noticed. She thought of her neighbors. The people who used to praise her name in church, who asked her for donations, for introductions. Would they even look at this boy? She thought of the women at the club who would frown at his clothes. The banker who might clutch his wallet. The teacher who might assume Nico was trouble. Josephine felt a sharp heat build in her chest. She had spent her life in polite society, where racism wore a clean smile and prejudice wore pearls. She knew what people would think. What they would say. They wouldn't see Nico. They would see his skin. His silence. His poverty. And they would decide who he was without asking. Where's your family? She asked gently. Nico shrugged. Gone. He didn't elaborate. She didn't press. Later, as she stood unsteadily, Nico helped her balance. Her ankle throbbed, but she nodded. I need to go home. Can you come with me? He blinked. You sure? I trust you, she said. More than most. The walk was long. Her leg hurt. He offered to carry her twice, but she refused. She leaned on his shoulder. People stared. At the store they passed, a man stepped out and narrowed his eyes. At the corner, a woman across the street whispered and pointed. Josephine kept walking. Each look, each whispered word, landed like a stone on her back. They didn't know Nico. They didn't care. They just saw a dark-skinned boy walking with a white woman and made their decision. At the ranch, the gates were closed. She entered the code and they swung open slowly. The staff barely spoke as they walked up the path. Some avoided her eyes. One woman whispered to another. Josephine felt it in every glance. The judgment. The confusion. But she didn't let go of Nico's hand. Inside the house, she sat him down in the parlor and called her doctor. Then her lawyer. Then the sheriff. She told them what happened. The attempt to poison her. The fake documents. The betrayal. They listened. They didn't question her memory. But when she told them about Nico, they hesitated. Ma'am, he may have been helpful, but, are you sure? He's a homeless child. You don't know his past. It's dangerous to get attached. Each word made her fists clench. They called him a risk. They didn't ask about his heart, his story, or his strength. They looked at his torn clothes and decided he was a problem. Josephine looked out the window where Nico sat quietly in the garden, watching butterflies. She knew better. This boy didn't need saving. He needed someone to stand beside him. And she was done being quiet. Josephine didn't expect a parade, but she also didn't expect the silence. The town had always been polite, always nodding, smiling, pretending to care. But now, after she brought Nico into her home, after she dared to say publicly that he mattered, the quiet had turned cold. It started with small things. Her favorite cashier at the grocer stopped saying hello. The neighbor who used to bring her lemons stopped waving. The women from church texted only once, a vague message about concerns and safety. But it wasn't just social distance. The system showed its teeth. She applied to enroll Nico in school. The local public school, where her family had donated to the library fund. She filled out the forms herself. But 2 days later, she got a call. "We'll need proof of guardianship," the administrator said. "And a birth certificate." "He doesn't have one," Josephine explained. "He was left without papers. He's a minor. He needs school." "We understand," the voice replied. "But policy is policy. No documents, no enrollment." That night, Josephine barely slept. She read policy after policy. Called contacts. Heard the same phrases again and again. "It's not personal. We have to follow procedure. There are shelters for kids like him." Shelters. The word made her stomach turn. She called 3 nearby. One was full. One said Nico needed to come alone to be admitted. The third said she couldn't bring him unless she was his legal guardian. So she filed for guardianship. That's when it got worse. Her lawyer, Paul, an old friend of her late husband, hesitated. "You're sure about this, Josephine?" "Of course I'm sure. You know how these things look. You're well known. You have assets. There could be questions about motive. Let them ask." He exhaled. "I'll get started. But be ready. These things take time. And the court, it's not always kind." The hearing date came. Josephine dressed in her best. Nico wore new clothes she bought him. Still simple, but clean and neat. His hands trembled as they waited outside the courtroom. "What if they say no?" he asked. She placed a hand over his. "Then we try again. And again. Until they listen." Inside, the judge barely looked at them. The social worker present had never spoken to Nico directly, but read from a file. No birth record, no medical history, no prior guardians. Estimated age, 11. Ethnicity, Hispanic. Likely undocumented. Likely. They didn't know. But that one word changed everything. The judge asked Josephine if she understood the risks. She said yes. "You understand he may be removed if immigration steps in. He saved my life. I owe him mine." The judge looked tired. Overworked. Disconnected. "Decision pending," he said. "We will reconvene in 60 days. 60 days. That meant no school. No ID. No access to medical coverage. A week later, Josephine took Nico to the library for books. She was trying to keep his mind busy, give him something to hold on to. He loved drawing, learning. While she browsed, Nico went to the children's corner. 10 minutes later, she heard shouting. "Ma'am, is this your child?" A security guard stood over Nico, one hand on his belt. "Yes." "Why?" "He was caught trying to leave with a book." Josephine blinked. "He checked it out. He used the card I got him." "Did he?" The woman behind the desk added, "He didn't look like he belonged here." Josephine turned to Nico. "Did you check it out?" He nodded. Quiet. Embarrassed. Tears already forming. "He belongs anywhere I do," she said. Her voice shook. She pulled the receipt from her purse and handed it to the guard. He read it. Said nothing. walked away. Nico clutched the book tighter. "I didn't do anything," he whispered. "I know," she said, holding his face in her hands. "I know." That night, Nico didn't eat. He sat on the bed, the book beside him, silent. Josephine tried reading to him, tried music, even silly voices. Nothing worked. Then, around midnight, he spoke. Just one sentence. "When people look at me like that, I feel like I disappear." Josephine sat beside him and cried. Back home, Josephine stared out the kitchen window. Nico was outside, sketching in the dirt with a stick. She made calls. Sent letters. Reached out to state offices. The answers never changed. "Without legal guardianship, he can't be covered under your insurance. We can offer limited care, but full services require documentation. Try social services." Social services said they were overwhelmed. "We can open a file. But reunification with next of kin is always the first goal." "There is no next of kin," she told them. "He's alone." The voice on the line paused. "We hear that a lot." At the pharmacy, she tried to get Nico an inhaler. He had asthma. She could hear it in his breathing. "We need a prescription. And his ID. He doesn't have one." "Then I can't help you. Not even over-the-counter relief." She bought honey and eucalyptus. Home remedies. And fury. She had never been denied care before. Never been made to feel helpless. Not like this. It opened her eyes. She saw the system clearly now. Not broken, designed. Designed to be safe for some, impossible for others. Nico wasn't falling through cracks. He was pushed. One morning, she took Nico to a local diner. A place she had visited for years. The waitress glanced at Nico and brought one menu. Said the booths were reserved, though half were empty. "We'll sit at the counter then," Josephine said. Her voice didn't shake. The food came late. Cold. The check came early. They walked out in silence. Nico said, "Was it because of me?" She stopped. Knelt to his level. "Yes. And not because of anything you did. Because of who they think you are. And they are wrong." He looked away. "I'm used to it." She wrapped her arms around him. "You shouldn't have to be." That night, she drafted a letter to the mayor. She titled it, "This town is not what it pretends to be." She detailed everything. The school rejection. The healthcare blocks. The court delays. The diner. The silence. She sent it. Then she published a version online. It didn't go viral. But people read it. Some replied in support. Others attacked her. White guilt. Virtue signaling. Why not help American kids? Each comment burned. But she didn't back down. Nico wasn't a cause. He was a boy. A boy who had done more good with nothing than many did with everything. Weeks passed. Her lawyer filed motions. She documented everything. She prepared a room for Nico. A real bedroom. A desk. Books. One night, Nico brought her a drawing. 2 stick figures. One taller, holding hands with the smaller one. "That's you and me," he said. She nodded, eyes wet. "That's right." She hung it above the fireplace. She didn't need approval. But she would fight for it anyway. It had rained the night before. The morning air smelled like wet leaves and dust. Josephine stood in front of the courthouse, wearing a dark green coat, Nico beside her, holding her hand tighter than usual. Today was the final hearing. She didn't speak as they walked in, but inside, her heart thudded like a drum. It wasn't just nerves. It was anger, a steady pulse of fury under her ribs. Anger at the sideways looks, the whispers, the things that weren't said but always felt. Anger that they had to prove something that should have been obvious from the start. All because Nico didn't fit their picture of what family should look like. In the courtroom, her son waited. Her biological son. Robert Callahan. He sat beside his attorney, legs crossed, smirking slightly. His suit was perfect. His hair slicked. His eyes cold. Nico gripped Josephine's coat. "That's him," he whispered. She nodded once. Her voice wouldn't come. The judge entered, called the session to order. Josephine stood when called. "Your Honor," Paul began. "Today, we request full legal guardianship for Josephine Callahan over the minor known as Nico. This request comes after 60 days of verified cohabitation, care, and support." Robert's lawyer stood. "We oppose the petition. The child is undocumented, unknown. This could endanger Mrs. Callahan's assets." Robert added, "She's being manipulated." That word. Josephine almost laughed. Manipulated. Like she hadn't watched Nico give up food to make sure she ate. Like she hadn't seen him cry because people treated him like trash. Like she hadn't been the one to see the tenderness in his eyes every night he tucked her blanket tighter before bed. She turned toward the judge. "He's not a threat. He's a child. A kind one. The kind this world needs more of." Robert stood suddenly. "He doesn't belong here. He could be from anywhere. For all we know, he could be dangerous." Josephine faced him fully now. "Do you know who this is?" He froze. The courtroom fell silent. Josephine pulled a file from her bag. "The private investigator's report. Photos. Documents. Medical files. This is the boy who stayed by me when I collapsed. This is the boy who carried me, who refused to steal from me when he had the chance. This is the boy who you tried to erase." Robert tried to speak. She raised her hand. "And this," she held up a smaller folder, newer, "is the report that confirms what you did." The judge looked over. "What are you submitting, Mrs. Callahan?" "A full record of actions taken by my son," she said, "to isolate me. To take my property. And to attempt to poison me." Gasps. The bailiff stepped forward. Robert paled. "She's lying," he shouted. "I didn't want to believe it either," Josephine said. "But I had to be sure. I had to see who really loved me." She turned back to Nico, who still hadn't let go of her hand. "And I did." The judge reviewed the evidence. He asked questions. He allowed time for both sides to respond. Then he ruled. Guardianship is granted to Josephine Callahan. Effective immediately. She exhaled for the first time in weeks. Robert stood, fists clenched, but his lawyer pulled him back. "It's over," she told him. "You lost me when you stopped seeing me as a person." As they left the courtroom, reporters called her name. Cameras flashed. She shielded Nico, kept walking. Each step outside the courthouse felt like reclaiming part of her dignity, and his. Back at the ranch, the staff stood at the door. A few nodded. One even smiled. She took Nico's hand and walked him upstairs. "This was my grandson's room," she said, opening the door. "I never had one. But I kept it ready, just in case." The room was clean but quiet, untouched for years. Dusty books. A tiny desk. A painting of a tree. Nico stepped inside. Slowly. Like it wasn't real. "You dreamed of me?" he asked. She nodded. "I didn't know it was you. But yes." He turned to her. His lip trembled. Then, without a word, he hugged her. And this time, she cried openly. She had lost a son that day. But she had found family. And just when Josephine thought the hardest chapter had closed, new battles waited outside the comfort of the ranch gates. The town's stares sharpened, whispers deepened, and decisions she made in love now lit fires of resentment. The morning light crept gently over the ranch, warming the dew-covered grass and glinting off the porch railings. Josephine stood in the kitchen, staring out the window, her hand wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee. It had been 3 months since the hearing. 3 months since Nico officially became her grandson in name and law. But outside the gates of the ranch, the world had not softened. Every trip into town felt heavier now. At the market, people still turned away. Some whispered. Others were more direct. The woman behind the bakery counter had once praised Josephine's every charity effort. Now, she offered no smile, only the price. They're punishing me for loving him, she thought. She felt it most at church. The pew she had sat in for over 2 decades now came with space around it. No greetings. No shared hymnal. Even the pastor's eyes seemed to skip over her. It wasn't just awkwardness. It was quiet disapproval wrapped in Sunday clothes. Josephine sat next to Nico, his small hand in hers, and tried not to let her resentment settle too deep. But it did. It crawled up from her stomach to her throat. These were the same people who donated canned goods at Christmas, who hosted charity brunches, who claimed to care for the least of these. And yet, when a real child needed love, they recoiled. Because of where he came from. Because he didn't look like them. One afternoon, Josephine attended a town hall meeting. She rarely spoke up, but that day, something inside her burned too hot to hold back. I want to propose a community education fund, she said. For undocumented children. For children who slipped through the cracks. The room fell silent. Then someone muttered, charity for criminals. Josephine turned, slow and deliberate. He is not a criminal. He is my grandson. And if you can't see past his skin to his soul, that's your failure. Not his. The meeting moved on. But the silence she left behind rang louder than any gavel. Despite it all, Nico flourished. He had a room, a desk, books in English and Spanish. Tutors came weekly. He began to draw again, filling pages with trees, animals, and sometimes, her. He'd sit at the table, tongue poked slightly between his lips, concentrating. She loved watching him lose himself in creation. One evening, he showed her a drawing. "This is us," he said. "Under the big tree. You're smiling." Josephine looked closely. The tree resembled the one on the ranch's hill, where they often sat after dinner. "I'm smiling because I'm proud," she told him. So proud. Spring came. Flowers bloomed again. Josephine received an invitation to speak at a women's leadership event. The topic was legacy. She hesitated at first. But then she thought of Nico. Of what silence had cost her. On the day of the event, she stood before a packed auditorium. Lights hot, hands calm. "Legacy isn't what you leave in your will," she began. "It's what you leave in someone's heart." She told them about Nico. About the alley. The courtroom. The stairs. They said he didn't belong, she said. But the truth is, the world doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to those who show up. Who choose love when it's hard. Applause came slow, then steady. After the talk, a young woman approached her in tears. "I was Nico once," she said. "I thought no one would ever choose me. Thank you." That moment shifted something. The local newspaper ran a story, "From silence to strength, one woman's stand for a child no one saw." Messages arrived. Some from strangers. Others from longtime friends who had been silent too long. "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. You were right. He is special. With support, Josephine launched a foundation, the Treehouse Fund. Named for the tree in Nico's drawings, it provided scholarships, mentoring, and emergency aid for children in need, regardless of status. Nico helped choose the logo. A simple sketch, a tree, two figures underneath, holding hands. A year passed. Nico, now in school, walked through the gates with a backpack slung over his shoulder and sneakers that finally fit. He waved at Josephine before disappearing into the crowd. She watched him from the car, her heart a quiet drum of pride. Back at the ranch, she opened a letter from a former classmate of Nico's. A boy who had bullied him early on. "He changed me," the letter read. "Because he never gave up. And because you didn't either." That evening, Nico sat beside her by the tree. He handed her a new drawing. Two figures again. One tall, one small. Above them, the words, "We found each other." She smiled. "Yes, we did." Then he added, almost in a whisper, "Do you think others like me will be found too?" She wrapped her arm around him. "I think they will. Because we're going to help find them." And so, with one simple act of kindness, a boy found a home. A woman found purpose. And a town began to see what love really looked like. If this story touched your heart, share it. Someone out there might need to believe that even in the quietest places, compassion can still speak the loudest.